Daniel McDonnell, hello.
Joe Molloy, hello.
Lots to get through in the show this evening. Half-time, Frankfurt, 0, Rangers 0. Eintracht. Wasn't sure what they go by. Eintracht?
I think Eintracht is probably the way we'll go.
Eintracht 0, Rangers 0, half-time. Amazing atmosphere. Described as Eurovision like pre-game, the opening ceremony.
Like, I want to be better atmosphere than the Eurovision.
That's a fair point.
So just people applauding every 3 minutes and then just sort of making silly faces at the camera.
Heart shapes to the camera.
Yeah.
Fair point. I saw it described as Eurovision like. It did look amazing on the TV. But when I say Eurovision, Dan, I mean excited, full of life, full of verve, colour.
I see what you're saying there, but I'm not sure. I'm not
Did
sure
you
if
watch any Eurovision?
the Eurovision standard. No, it was my sister's 50th birthday party, and it was on out in the sort of the lobby area. So I sort of went out to see the voting every so often, and got various updates.
Yeah.
So Phil Cawley was the DJ at the party and was doing updates on the Eurovision for the crowd.
9 million watched it in the UK alone.
Well, they gave it a go this year, didn't they?
They sure did.
Yeah, I mean, not content with sort of Premier League dominance in Europe and even Rangers being in the Europa League final. They're making a pop for the Eurovision as well.
It was a genuinely lovely moment when Ukraine were given 400 points by the voting public.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Like a big hug.
I think the odds were stacked in their favour from the start. As in, they were expected to win. Yeah. So I guess it wasn't unexpected, but still to see it happen.
Well, they were well down the pecking order when it came to the judging panels, showing no sentiment. The judging panels.
Do you know it's going to be a weird one next month? Look, when Ireland play Ukraine twice, and there's going to be a game in Poland. Where Ireland are playing Ukraine in a neutral venue in Poland, which I'd imagine is going to be highly emotionally charged, because you'd imagine there'd be a lot of Ukrainians there, because naturally it's been a main point of entry for Ukrainian people. So, what may on paper sound like a slightly unusual game in neutral territory. When you think of a game in neutral territory, you almost imagine that there'll be no one there or something. I feel like this will be very different. Now, like, you have this situation where, like, Scotland are playing Ukraine in the World Cup playoff.
Where's that on?
In Scotland, with the winners playing Wales in the final. But it's one of those where, like, Scotland, obviously, if they're on, they want to get to a World Cup for the first time since 1998, when they made the last Euros. But, like, this is going to be Ukraine's first game. I think, like, the whole world is going to be willing them on almost, and that whole situation, like, is going to spill over into the sporting sphere, like, in a big way. I know it has already with individual players at their clubs and various gestures, but you can imagine the national team coming together. They are coming here as well, and it's going to be a game that the FAI are going to make a big play to sell it naturally. And it's a really big game for Stephen Kenny, a really big game for Ireland. But the whole Ukraine thing, it's the one, you imagine Ukrainians here probably will go to that game as well. I think there's tickets being given to them as well. So it's just something that's coming around the tracks. It's not too far away now. It's like 2 weeks. I think it's 2 weeks today. I head off to Armenia, so it's sort of it's around the corner for the start of those internationals. Yeah.
Let's recap on very dramatic news today, which has engulfed the League of Ireland. 10 men arrested, alleged match fixing in the League of Ireland. Operation Brookweed.
Yeah.
This is the anti-bribery and corruption unit of the Garda National Economic Crime Bureau, and they were investigating on the basis of reports of suspected match fixing received from the FAI and from UEFA in 2019. The age range of those arrested between early 20s up to 60s. Number of residential properties searched in the southern region of the country and Dublin as well. There was a short FAI statement to say that they note the latest developments in the Gardaí inquiry into alleged match fixing, have a zero tolerance policy on this front. It's understood and been reported in various quarters that a number of the arrested men are current and former League of Ireland players, and that all of the allegations date back to the 2018-2019 season, which is far too close for comfort.
I'm not sure about that they all date back to that, by the way, but certainly a portion of them do. It's just a point of order on it.
Okay, well, I saw that reported in the Irish Times, so I was working off that. Certainly significant proportion of them.
They're looking back at
2018,
things
19
prior
season.
to that. They definitely are looking back at things prior to that, as much as I know. But yeah, that's not incorrect.
Okay.
It's just that the scope, I think, is wider in terms of the calendar period they might be looking at.
Okay. What else do you want to add then? You've been working in this story.
Yeah, I mean, I've been speaking to a lot of people about it, but it is one of these things where, I mean, legally, it's hard to expand too much on it. Like, there's, there's been a lot of conversations on it today, and very naturally in the world you operate in, which is quite a small world, everyone's saying, well, who is it and who's involved here and so on. And I mean, I would be aware of the names, but obviously it's not something that can be disclosed in the public domain at this point. And who knows where it goes to the extent where that will happen. But there is, the fact that there's, of the 10, there's 7 players who've played in the league. 2 of them are currently playing in the league. The other 5 aren't currently active at League of Ireland level, but some would be involved in football at the moment at other levels. And like the broader subject of match fixing in the League of Ireland or betting irregularities around the League of Ireland, we have been here before. It's not something that's a source of surprise or shock to people, as much as it's shocking to hear it still and for it to lead bulletins and headlines. And the FAI have said they'll take a zero tolerance approach. I mean, they have to, really, because unfortunately, like this does, and I touched on it in the news round earlier on, and it's very, very unfair, but it does sort of tarnish everyone in some way, because some people, like, it's been a great year for the league in many respects. The crowds have been up. There's been a really good vibe around it. Like, the crowds are up 50. I mean, they're up 25%, I think, on 2019, the last season before restrictions, but like 56% on 2017.
Yeah.
Which is incredible growth, So there's so much to be encouraged by, and yet something like this, and people will say, well, the League of Ireland is only in the headlines for bad news, which isn't true, but it certainly is one that gets it onto the news bulletins, the main news bulletins, and, being discussed heavily. And some people, all they will hear is, well, that League of Ireland is dodgy, isn't it? And that's what happens with this, and it's why in the world that you operate in, over a long, prolonged period of time, there have always been games or certain matches or certain stories that people would tell with a sort of annoying, oh yeah, you've heard the rumours about it and stuff. But this stuff is like serious. Like, it's really, it's really serious, and the implications of it could be very serious. Yeah.
Do we know were the bets placed in the country or outside?
In this instance, I don't want to say anything with certainty because I'm not like 100% sure, but this instance, it does appear to be more locally. Like, there's been stories in the past where it was like, Asian markets, UEFA were reporting to the FAI that like there was Asian market activity on games. I'm not sure if that's the case in this instance. I got the impression it may not be the case, but I mean, who knows? Like, that all of this will probably come. It hasn't been mentioned to me initially that that's the case. Doesn't mean that it's not.
Match fixing is an umbrella term. Are we talking here about fixing the result of a match, or are we talking about those more specific bets, i.e. first corner, goals to be scored by both teams, number of throw-ins, etc.?
Yeah, listen, that is a key point. There is no doubt it's a key point, but it's not really, like, it's not, does it lessen it? I mean, and some people's always sitting around it discussing it in a pub or something, like, it might not seem as bad if, a team was still winning a game, say, hypothetically, but both teams were scoring in the game. So, they're 3 or 4-0 up or something, and then there's a concession late on, and it's like, well, what harm? I mean, it's against the rules. It's a crime, effectively. Like, I mean, we can see it. I think there's a variance. Like, I think there's a number of different bets, from what I can gather, under exploration as part of this. I think some of them may well be related to the outcome of games and results that would be negative to a team. That's sort of to a club where a lot of this activity seems to be centred around. There's other stories, again, that you'd be aware of, you would have heard, where speculation would exist around, as I said, like sort of spot betting stuff. It's like, both teams to score, or certain things like penalties or red cards or various other things that may not technically directly affect the outcome of the match.
And is it your understanding that this largely or in totality revolves around one club, or is this across a number of teams?
I think the activity here is all around one club, and I think that in recent years, and possibly even as part of stuff that was happening in 2019, I think that there was other fixtures being looked at, and of course in games where like there's two teams involved in a game and people may ask questions about another team involved in games that are being examined, but I don't think it's come to the stage where two clubs are being investigated for their role in a particular match. All the individuals to me in this instance seem to be linked with one club. Yeah.
How many incidents are we talking about? How many games?
Well, this is the point of, this is where there's a slight disagreement, I think, in some of the reporting around it, where you say, 2018 and 2019, and
maybe initially it was that.
Yeah, was it? This is the thing. So was it a handful of games in 2019? I think whatever way this probe has gone, wherever it's gone to, it's taken them back, I think, to games in 2016, 2017. The extent of which I don't know how much that's forming, but I don't think it may have started with 2 games or 1 or 2 games, but I don't think it's ended there.
And do we know, with regard to what alerted the bookmakers, who then I'm sure alerted the FAI, was it this colossal spike in volume over, for instance, and I'm speaking very hypothetically here, because I've made a point of not asking you off air what club, what players, or any other information, because I don't want to know. I don't want to come on air knowing that. But do we know, for instance, hypothetically, was there just a massive increase in the volume of bets on something that, would be perceived as fairly unimportant, like number of corners in a game? Or was it more a case of, well, this was quite a long odds bet and plenty of people had a nibble at it and it actually happened?
There's actually a bit of both sort of within it, and again I'm wary of sort of,
you don't know identify a match.
Yeah, exactly. But there is stuff related to score lines of matches and margins, I think, and then a high volume of traffic on a particular scenario, a result that would be deemed reasonably unlikely. That raises concerns that this isn't something I've heard myself today, but I did see it in the RTE report, was a reference to a geographical concentration of some bets, which would have, again, alerted people. Like, I remember, historically, this is not this instance, this is maybe going back over a decade, but a game that would have been the source of some sort of speculation, and there was a high volume of bets recorded on a match, and it was in a different country, but it was in such a way that it got people wondering. And it may all have been very entirely innocent and, related to, unavailability of players and stuff like that. But clearly those things send out a red flag, when there's a concentration in an area or in a market. And I think there's a bit of all of that here in this. It's not just one, to put it this way, it's not as if there's been one particular repeated specific bet that was coming up all the time, to the same degree. I can't imagine, if people are proven to have been up to something here, I can't imagine people would expose themselves that easily, if you know what I mean, by making it that visible that it's always a particular scenario that happened. But again, like this, there is, I suppose, when you have, say, current player involvement, it's a serious situation in every scenario, right? It's not just, but you could maybe see a scenario where if none of the people involved are, say, currently active in the league, how people could suddenly find a way to distance themselves from it, and say, well, this is something that happened in the past, but these people aren't involved in the game anymore. When you have sort of a degree of a current element to it, it puts more scrutiny probably on the authorities. But of course, again, these current people involved, they've been brought in, they've had questions to answer, and they're fully, they will defend themselves. Exactly. Arrest have been made. It is serious, but yeah.
Last one. This is probably difficult enough to answer, but you're saying, the league tarnished with this reputation. You watch more League of Ireland football than I do.
Yeah.
I have to say, in the games I watch on television, I don't see anything that arises any suspicion in me, I have to say. Do you see incidents where you think that is a funny thing to happen in a game between professionals?
Well, no, but I think this is I don't, but that's because primarily I would probably see Premier Division games, with sort of teams going for league titles and stuff like that, whereas again, without being too directing people in a particular direction, but it is fair to say that across the last decade generally a lot of the allegations have centred around lower profile games in the first division. And that is a thing. So you would occasionally see footage of matches and stuff, and people have said, what do you think of this?
Right.
But they're not games I'm seeing myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 1-0 to Rangers. They have just scored as we speak. Watching a replay of the goal, I missed it. We're seeing a kick out, Eintracht kick out, headed forward and then flicked behind himself by an Eintracht player.
He then lost his footing.
Terrible moment. So he just got under the header. He was trying to head the ball forward, and then instead he fell behind himself a little bit and flicked it on, and Rangers player in and scores and finishes pretty easily. I'll get you goal scorer name in just a second, but the headline news: Rangers 1, Eintracht Frankfurt 0.
Joe Aribo with the goal. Yeah, he completely outpaced the Eintracht defender. Like, he sort of won a foot race over 5 yards pretty easily, and he's taking his chance. Yeah. Okay.
1-0 Rangers. Our football show coverage brought to you by Sky. Watch every UEFA Champions League and Europa League match live on BT Sport this season. Back 1 sec. Welcome back. Rangers 1-0 up in Seville against Frankfurt. They've just scored. Bit of a theme here, Dan, and not a great theme, I suppose, for football. So I was reading Jonathan Wilson, who's over at this game in Seville, and he starts off by saying a man in an orange shirt stumbled down a narrow street in the Alfalfa district of Seville. It was just before 11 a.m, but the stench of booze preceded him. His eyes were half closed and he looked as if he hadn't slept for a couple of days. Over his shoulder, he wore a placard bearing the message in English and Spanish that he was willing to pay €500 for a ticket for the Europa League Final tonight. He staggered up to a pair of bemused French tourists. "I'll give you 500, he said in a Glaswegian slur. "Cash, dinero." And that was his opening. And then he said, and I hadn't realised this, Seville police are anticipating as many as 100,000 fans from Scotland and 50,000 fans from Germany for the meeting of Rangers and Eintracht Frankfurt. And Jonathan Wilson says, given how the city went into meltdown in 03, collapsed phone network, dearth of taxis, streams of fans trudging back along the road from the stadium, when around 100,000 arrived for the UEFA Cup final between Celtic and Porto, that represents a daunting challenge. And he said, even if there's a clip from the police commissioner, even if 150 fans don't come, if it's half that number or less, we will have substantial issues, is what the Seville police commissioner said. It turns out he wasn't wrong, because already social media today abuzz with various clips of Rangers fans and Eintracht Frankfurt fans throwing chairs at each other. Seem to be the main weapon of choice.
Yeah, there seems to be a bit from both sides, as they say.
It turns out the Eintracht Frankfurt ultras have been involved in incidents across their European campaign thus far.
Yeah, which haven't necessarily commanded the same headlines in the same way that activity of other clubs might, because there was that game where they took over took over Barcelona effectively. They bought a load of tickets,
30,000.
Yeah, so I sort of mentioned it earlier, like, the Europa League is can often be derided by a sort of a big Premier League club fan focused discussion, and yet it really does mean the world to these teams that are involved, and they're fanatically supported. Whatever people here might think of Rangers, they have a massive fan base. And there's a bit of previous, where the degree of doubt over how they might behave, it can be traced back to sort of, was it Manchester in 2008, where the place was sort of torn apart when they were playing Zenit.
Jonathan Wilson makes that point. So he said Eintracht Frankfurt ultras have been involved in a number of incidents in their European adventure this season, and the two previous European finals Rangers reached, Barcelona in 1972, which I wasn't, aware of. And then, as you mentioned, Manchester in 2008 culminated in widespread disorder. And it was very striking a week or two ago. Graham Souness recorded this video, and again, obviously, within Rangers and within Glasgow, there was a sense of fearing the worst here. 100,000 fans. So this was a video of Graham Souness. People probably saw this a couple of weeks ago. It seems, it's fallen on deaf ears based on the footage from Seville thus far. But here was Souness making an appeal of sorts.
Hi guys, this is a message for everyone going to Seville. Go there, have a super time, support your team. Our team has done incredibly well in getting there. And you think the journey we've been on for the last 10 years to be now playing in a serious European Cup final, fantastic achievement. They've done their bit, now it's your turn. You have to turn up there, behave yourselves, have a party, but make sure you behave yourselves, because you're going there as an ambassador for our football club, our great football club, the great Glasgow Rangers. You must go there and behave. Otherwise, we've got all the trashy headlines, which would damage us for a long, long time. Please go there and behave yourselves. Have a super time.
You do say it's fallen on deaf ears, yet, and I'm conscious that the game is only taking place at the moment.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say something that can run out of date very quickly. But I think there was such carnage in 08 that there's almost a feeling that what you've seen so far is almost better
so far.
Yeah, I know, but I think some of the stuff in a way it was even prior to the game, though, from what I recall. But still, there's a sense that it hasn't sort of lived up to the worst expectations. But we'll see how the night goes. As I said, the previous isn't coming from nowhere either, but it hasn't been quite the carnage of 08 thus far.
Well, who knows? Maybe it was Chris Sutton who did the trick.
Hello there to all the Rangers fans out there in Seville. I'm just following on with the messages from Graham Souness and Ian Durant and Richard Goff. Please just behave out in Seville and try not to let yourselves down. Okay, come on, do the right thing, guys. And be good and behave and don't do anything naughty out there, okay?
Pretty funny.
He's got the tone right. He has got the tone right, and it is the whole Celtic thing is you reference 03, but like it was always the fan behaviour was hailed, largely as sort of not a million miles away from the sort of depiction of say Irish fans at the European Championships and stuff like that.
We pride ourselves on it.
I don't know if they were serenading nuns and stuff like that. Can't imagine the Rangers fans doing that. But there was. It comes a little bit from that there's a degree of Celtic fans saying, "Well, we weren't spoken of in those terms when we went there," and this is where the Sutton thing I think comes from. Ironically, poking fun at that, but I suppose if Rangers hang on for the next 22 minutes and win this, and Eintracht have just missed a great chance, I'm not sure any Celtic people will be feeling too happy with themselves tonight.
It brings us to Billy Sharp. These are all interconnected. It's a grim aspect to football fandom, I suppose. So this is Forest and Sheffield United. You were watching this game last night.
I did watch most of it. Yeah.
Liverpool last night, and then you saw that you were saying once they equalised, you felt they'll probably get the job done, and they duly did. Ferraris in the garage, as Jurgen Klopp said. I've got Ferraris that
you just knew when they were level by half time with the bench they had. I just felt.
Speaking of level,
we have a goal. We have a goal for Eintracht. It is true nowadays when you're doing sort of radios, you have that pause for a second of they're celebrating a goal, but is there some VAR check just about to come to take this away?
They're still celebrating, and none of the Rangers players are pointing.
They're already going back to the halfway line, so they've reached the point of this actually is a goal.
1-1, 70 minutes on the clock. So you felt once Liverpool equalised?
Yeah. Well, it was one of those where the two games were off at the same time, and Sheffield United scored 30 seconds into the second half, needing 2 goals, but they scored one. It was like, it's game on here, and John Egan was rallying the Sheffield United fans behind the goal, and you just sensed this is going to be a good game. It did. It went the distance, went all the way to extra time and penalties. Once I was flicking over and back, but once I saw Liverpool, when they were ahead, it was like, well, Southampton are coming back from this.
It's pretty impressive on Liverpool's part. It's a really good goal, by the way, the Eintracht goal. Good cross, good finish. Rangers, I'm sure, will say, we could have stopped it. You can stop most goals, but it's a good goal, and it's 1-1 after 70 minutes. So I'm sure you've seen what happened if you're on social media at all over the last 24 hours. Nottingham Forest win, So, I mean, this is a happy stadium. This isn't a stadium in revolt. And there's a pitch invasion, which is, I suppose, a tradition of these kind of nights. And the Sheffield United captain, Billy Sharp, who was standing there, he was injured, so he wasn't playing. And I suppose, what would you describe it, Dan, as a kind of running headbutt?
I mean, it is, yeah. I don't think there's any other way of phrasing it.
Yeah. And those around Sharp were in shock and were looking at him trying to figure out what had happened, and then they half saw the assailant and looked after him, and somebody went to take off after him. I don't know what happened. Presumably he was caught in some way, because Nottinghamshire police announced 31-year-old man arrested on suspicion of assault in connection with this incident. He remains in custody. He'll be questioned by officers. So what Sharp said, the victim of the attack, Billy Sharp, the Sheffield United captain, he said, "One mindless idiot ruined what was an unbelievable night of football. Congratulations to Nottingham Forest on their victory and good luck in the final. As an ex-Forest player, I'll not let one scumbag ruin my respect for the Forest fans." And then the Sheffield United manager, Paul Heckingbottom, he said some interesting things. He said, Billy was minding his own business. He was assaulted, blindsided. It was cowardly. Billy's shaken up. He needs stitches. We have the footage. We always see people talking about player safety. Nothing is ever done about it. We're seeing things, and this was the point, I suppose, which ties in with the Rangers issue and the kind of chat we had with Matt Lawton a couple of weeks back about drugs being used by fans going to games, and just police are talking about an increase in poor behaviour. So the Sheffield United manager, we're seeing things thrown on the pitch increasingly, and things that are thrown on putting players' health and safety in danger. Nothing's ever done about it. And then he said of the incident last night, there will be something done about that. We've seen what's happened. We know what's happened. There's a prison sentence. There's no, there without a doubt, there's a prison sentence. And he said, how can you come to a place of work minding your own business and be assaulted in that fashion? It's just bang out of order. It's everything that's wrong. Too many times we hear people condemn it. Nothing's done about it. We're the ones that suffered. It's upsetting for lots of reasons. I don't want to say too much more. He'll be dealt with.
Yeah, and I mean, and he will be. And, you know, there probably does need to be some kind of sanction landed upon a club in this instance.
Where do you think it leaves the pitch invasion? You were wondering about that in the news.
Yeah, wasn't it, of course, the City Ground where that famous clip years ago of the pitch invasion where Clough had a pop at a couple of the Forest fans, and then wasn't there a photo op with them afterwards or something that was arranged?
Same touchline.
Yeah. And like, it is a big part of these playoff games. Like, you see it, you know, various sort of games I've been watching in the last week in the playoffs, because there's sort of great drama, and it is a part of it at the end. I think there was there one, I think in I'm not sure actually when Hillsborough, because Sunderland won in the end, but like there was that anticipation around games that it would happen. I don't know, like, it is one of these things where you wrestle with it. Like, do you punish an entire fan base and remove a tradition on the sake of because of the behaviour of one fan? But the flip side is that if you think the cultural mood out there is such that people are willing to go on the pitch and do this, like, this was always going to be caught on camera, you know what I mean? It wasn't like a sort of a sly
perfect
dig
crime
or something out of sight, you know, in the tunnel. So I don't know, I'm always in favour of trying to preserve as much fan culture that's authentic and natural as possible, but maybe then when clubs do have instances like this where people misbehave, you do have to enforce stronger sanctions so that it makes people think twice. But again, I don't know, I can't speak about the specifics of this case again, but you don't know what's going through people's mind. And if you have a large number of people there, I mean, it does only take one. This doesn't excuse it in any way, to be clear, but look, it was a really highly charged game. Even Heckingbottom there in the first half, the Forest player was slow taking a throw in, and he jammed the Heckingbottom sort of went up and rammed the ball into his chest, and it led to like a sort of one of these, you know, 22 men sort of people pushing and shouting. And then at half time the Forest players held back on the pitch because I think the suspicion was there was going to be a bit of tunnel antics with Sheffield United. It was a very physical game, but again, like, you're always going to have physical games in the playoffs where everything's at stake. And again,
can't base your pitch invasion
but
policy.
a lot of these grounds, like, if I mean, this thing, if 40,000, you're not going to go back to the days of putting up steel fences around grounds, you know, in that country. But if 20,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 or whatever it is, people decide to get on the pitch, you don't really have the security levels to stop it.
No, it strikes me at Croke Park, if fans still wanted to run onto the pitch, they could.
Of course they could. Like you're seeing, as I said, a lot of League of Ireland games this year, there's been pitch incursions as well. And sometimes it's just people running on to take a video of themselves. It's very unusual. We've seen that at the Aviva with the Ireland games, and it's, obviously the girl come on to get the Ronaldo shirt, and everyone's like, isn't that nice? But then, a bloke comes on in a rugby top, and it's like, you're sort of thinking
less cute. Would you say less cute?
Yeah, but should you put out a statement about the first one as though we've obviously decided not to punish this person and all this? Like, it's just become a thing that people do. Unless you have the opposite, of course, security wise, is you can go to Baku in Azerbaijan, where there was security guards all around the perimeter of the pitch, a very highly securitized state, it must be said, Azerbaijan, and there was security guards around the entire perimeter. There was more security guards in the ground than Azerbaijan fans. There will be no pitch invasion in Baku.
What is the appropriate punishment for the 12-year-old pitch invader?
Well, it's a good point, Joe. It's a good point, but I mean, you're not going to punish them, but are you going to put out a statement endorsing it? It's like saying,
was she on the Late Show?
All you kids on your coming future, it's okay if you're coming on to look for a jersey.
Do I have it in my head? Was she on the Late Show?
Are you confusing it with the toy show?
I think there was like a point of celebration.
You might well be right. There was definitely an FEI statement put out there was a bit of levity injected to the situation, which you have to be careful about that with just this general topic of pitch invasions.
We don't want parents sending their kids out there, go get that jersey.
Yeah, and what if you're 15, 16, slightly bigger, less cute, and potentially more intimidating, but you're looking out for a jersey? Where do you draw the line with this?
On this I suppose if I'm conscious we're picking this Rangers situation, and Frankfurt actually should be said, in Seville, and we have the Billy Sharp incident last night, and then there's this next point. I'm going to play a bit of Matt Lawton, who was on the show a few weeks back. So we're kind of conflating a few different things here, and in some respects these are all very specific incidents, but then in other respects it's part of this melting pot that is, I don't know, the match going fan at the moment. So Matt Lawton, he wrote a brilliant piece for the Times. This was back in February, and he had been spending time with UK police who look after football matches, and they were speaking very genuinely about a real increase in incidents in drug use around games. It now seems that at various train stations where there were matches on, there were police waiting with sniffer dogs to catch those coming off the train going to matches, trains being trashed, just to not a great situation. And for instance, we're talking all sorts of games here. He was writing about crowd trouble between Grimsby and Notts County fans, and then there was further trouble the next day in Nottingham city centre. And Matt here in this clip, for instance, laid out the UK police have noted this increase in drug use around games and increase in violence and troubles from football fans. So here's Matt Lawton speaking to us. This was back in February.
A lot of games are under policed, but look, they, in fairness, they've only just started doing these drug search operations, and they're only at the moment compiling this evidence. So they're actually working with some academics. There's a professor at Kent University, and there's a link with Oxford University, and they're doing a proper academic study about it. They want to actually demonstrate that it is an issue. But no, they certainly believe that to be the case. And the two guys I was with, the way it works in English football, it is there are dedicated officers that are attached to each club, but then there's two guys, Stuart Dickerson and Wayne Mitchell, who are dedicated national football police officers. And they've both been football officers for 10, 15 years because Stuart was attached to Portsmouth for some years before that. So you have to say that they know what they're talking about, and they are saying that there is a definite rise in it. There's a definite escalation in drug use among football crowds, for sure.
There we are. So it's happening.
It is. I mean, we've spoken recently, I think on the paper review, about sort of, cocaine use generally in Ireland. And as I said, again, not to be specific, but there's been instances around games here this year. maybe different type of thing. People throwing fireworks onto the pitch and stuff like that, just like mad stuff, really.
Fireworks or flares?
Well, flares, but I mean they're an extension of the firework family. Like in one case, recently, thrown into the crowd at games and stuff, and so
right.
There's you name one club and you get accused of like honing in on them, but there's been multiple instances. We can sit here now and take put ourselves in on the ivory tower. It's like, well, that behaviour is shocking, but it's coming from somewhere, like, there's more than one case of it. It's not just one outlier here or there. It's
there's something going on for sure. It's just hard to explain it because it's a million different things and a million different reasons, and football is just one outlet, but it's a very visible outlet.
Yeah, it is. I mean, again, like, it's a very easy way to be seen in some cases, like, and is that what it's about in some instances?
And if you take the chair throwers in Seville, some of those guys are probably off their heads and just looking for a bit of chaos. Others are very angry about things going on and want to express the rage in some way that they feel. And we kind of romanticize football as an outlet for your rage, as in, well, I shout at the players the way I want to shout at my boss Monday to Friday, and there is that romantic.
We love the tribal aspect of it.
Yeah, and there's tribal aspect, and there's some who like see it as like it's us against them and it's our club and we're going to beat these ultras. And then I think there's like young lads out for a bit of adventure, and this is like a way to get some adventure, I suppose.
I know,
and 20 other different motivations. So it's hard to say it's one thing, but
yeah, no, it is. I mean, as I said, it's a lot of it can be an extension of what's happening in society. Like, people might say, you hear this, I don't know, I'm not out enough to know, do they feel a little bit less safe around city centres at times now than they did previously? Certainly, it's a complaint you would have heard.
I don't think Dublin's not in a good place.
No, like that would be a complaint. As I said, I haven't been out late at night, so I don't want to say that, but even off the back of the initial, when we were in that sort of mini opening phase, I mean, there was a feeling around town here that it was a little bit more of an element around the place, and they were latching themselves on to certain, like, when everyone started congregating, was it in this is very Dublin orientated, but when people started to latch on to, say, South William Street and stuff like that, and then there was issues happening there, and again, that is part of people just latching on to something,
well, I haven't been out in a long time.
Yeah.
But even just leaving here at 10 o'clock, 10:30, very different atmosphere I felt to pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
Hard to
it does seem to
verbalise it in perfect terms, but it just feels a touch different.
I mean, the flip side of that, are you, because you had that period of time of not being exposed to those crowds, are you a little bit more aware of them, whereas previously you might have had the head down and not necessarily noticed?
Don't think so. I don't think so, but it's possible. Yeah, it's just one person. I'm just having to be sitting here.
No, it's a common lived experience that I've heard a lot of people make that point. Yeah.
Yeah. We are going to take a short break. So we are at 84 minutes. It is 1-1 between Eintracht and Rangers. 6 minutes to go in that game. Dan McDonnell in with myself for the football show. It is, as ever, here on Off the Ball, with thanks to Sky. You can watch every UEFA Champions League and Europa League match live on BT Sport this season. Short break. Now you're welcome back. It is 1-1. Eintracht 1, Rangers 1. Somebody says, lads, interesting discussion. All just boils down to a palpable sense of frustration out there amongst so many, says Tony. I'm sure that is absolutely part of it. I was just saying to you during the ad break as well, I can feel a touch pearl clutching when we talk.
Yeah, I don't want to be that. It's not about,
like, a bit of revelry in life is important.
Yeah.
And having a few drinks and being a bit loud and all that stuff is absolutely,
you
part
can't,
of life.
There's a danger of, like, sort of inadvertently, like, demonising all fan culture, or, like, part of what we love about football, for me anyway, like, is the tribalism. It's the passion. Like, I some of the most memorable stadiums I've been to would be intimidating. They would be like, that sort of aggression, like Legia Warsaw or PAOK and stuff. And again, like, it's not a case of sort of thinking we need to sanitise everything. But again, running headbutts on the pitch is obviously
no, and the throwing chairs aspect and, like, the fighting, I suppose, in Seville is just really grim. It is. But in turn, I certainly fondly remember in college me and three mates saying, we got to go to Paris for this Ireland game. It was when Bright Kerr was the manager. That 0-0 draw. Kilban, great performance in that game with Roy Keane. And like, I vividly remember standing, I think like there were like 30,000 Irish fans for that game. Vividly remember standing like whatever that street is outside the Moulin Rouge, and Irish fans are there in their thousands. And we were like, grand. Went around the corner, bought a crate, dropped it on the street, drank there for the evening. I'm sure we were all loud. I'm sure the locals were thinking, ugh. So like, there has to be, you shouldn't have to feel like you go to a city and you're not seen or heard. Like there is, but we're talking about a level beyond
just
that.
a little bit we're talking about the next level up from that. But you watch people throwing chairs in a town square or something, and it does bring you back to, like, I mean, you can find footage from Italia 90 and World Cup 98 and stuff where this was happening as well. And it's always sort of been it's part of the game.
Do you think maybe there was just a period this century where it really improved?
I think there were, well, I'm sort of probably alluding to England fans there, but I know in recent years Mark Ogden and a couple of people have written about this. I just remember Mark has a piece in particular about it, that there was a feeling that the England away days have become a little bit more raucous again in that respect. Some of the sort of what would you describe them as, sort of like the no surrender chants for making a comeback. And I mean, people were then trying to think, is this linked to the sort of the Brexit attitude, and some degree of defiance as well.
It's a hell of a coincidence. I know, but it is a coincidence if it's not linked. I mean, there is something at the moment in the world which feels a little bit chaotic, angry.
A form of nationalism creeping back in.
Yeah, for sure. We are pretty much done. Irish Independent tomorrow, I suspect, will be interesting. You've been working all day on this.
Yeah, just writing pieces on it, on the situation. I've worked on a couple. I mean, it's one of these where there's only so much you can touch on at this stage. We're writing about the general issue, but we'll see where it goes. Yeah. Okay. Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent, thank you. Into added time, still 1-1 in Seville, so heading for extra time, maybe penalties. OTB AM is with you tomorrow morning as usual from 7:30. Gavin Kilkenny will be on. Alan Quinlan will be on as well, and then off the ball as usual 7 o'clock tomorrow evening.